Okay, so we're now moving on to item 8.1, 2025 Strategy, Operations and Finance Work Programme. You'll note that the presentation up on the screen was sent out to elected members last night. And so, yeah, this session will be kind of a bit of a high-level overview on some thoughts around what could be included in the soft work programme for the year ahead. And also, the finalised version of this will be coming back to the March soft. So this is an opportunity for kind of some high-level thinking to be tested, and then any comments to be noted down by staff. The final version coming back in March. Chris just mentioned to me too that if there's a lot of feedback, we'll look to have a briefing or a workshop where we can kind of flesh things out even further. But yeah, by all means, take this opportunity to kind of comment and provide feedback, because that's what this is sort of for. So yeah, Chris, over to you to run us through and just let us know when it's best to stop for any comments or questions.
Amazing, thank you. And that's a great opening. I'll just add to that to say, today I'm going to do a bit of a step through the preso which you have. I'm not going to dive into the detail of it. For those of you who really want to get into the detail, you can let me know if there's anything that you want to chat about. As Sophie's mentioned, we're really looking just to test, is there anything missing? Is there anything we want to add a focus on? And I know that when you look at a written sentence that says something like regulatory update, you go, on what? So underneath this sort of headers is some more detail. So if there's anything we need to test as we go through to make sure that the things you're interested in are included in those, we'll do that as well. So again, we'll get through what we can this morning, and then if there's further need to dig a bit more, we can. So to kick us off, we thought it would actually be good to do, let's look back first at actually what we did. So we'll just do a quick dive into that with you. Then we'll get into 2025 and have a bit of a chat. So I just want to highlight to you the next steps, because I think that's helpful, that in line with what we did last year in 2024, effectively after this chat, we're going to come back in March, we'll finalise the work programme, and we'll be linking back anything you have. Last year, we tried to look at what needs to go to some of our other committees. So some things go up to council, some things actually went to either social sustainability or climate and environment, depending on what they were. So that is likely to be a feature of the way we move forward again. That said though, I think it's important to check in of the things that we said we were interested in, did we actually get to them? So that's part of what we're going to chat about. So you endorsed last year's work programme in April, in the April soft meeting. We did quarters. Now, I know it says 24, quarter 4, 1 and 2. It's the financial year we're looking at. So that's why it says quarter 4 first. We included in the work programme what we knew at that time. So things did get added in and some things got shifted. There was an acknowledgement about the other committees, and those work programs came in slightly after we'd looked at SOFs, and so that's why we needed to do some shuffling. And that was really about ensuring the workload across the committees was appropriate, and that in terms of your standing orders and delegations, that things were in the right place. So we have included a bit of an assessment here, and really what I wanted to highlight was where those shifts in focus happened. Did we progress things through the quarters achieved, or did it, was it slightly delayed, i.e. pushed somewhere else or out, but still happened? Effectively, you'll see the detail here. A large portion of the proposed work program did get reallocated actually, and part of that was to reduce duplication of discussion, but also to ensure that work progressed in a timely manner. And that was around when did we need things approved or discussed so that we could keep stuff going. Across all of the committees, there was a huge volume of updates, of decisions, of work that progressed. We actually did a lot in 24. I've included the councillors' top 10 actions for year one that we reported in the 23-24 report. I'm not looking to have a big discussion on it. I'm just highlighting to you that you actually said in the 23-24 report that all of the things you wanted to do were on track. So we're reporting against those things for you. We're shortly going to come out for year 2, and you'll have the same thing. We do talk to you all the time about it, but we report that to the public just to show that we are on track with the things that you have said are a priority, and that was on the basis of what you heard from the community, so that we're focusing on the stuff that's important for the people that we serve. So, almost all of the work progressed as expected. Several items were delayed. They remained in progress, and you were updated during the year through policy work program update and or briefings. So we were making decisions together the whole way. I just wanted to note a few items that did swivel and move a bit. So you can see the list there. You've got things from Rangiora Road, which is obviously an opportunity for social housing in Otaki, and part of that was we're waiting to hear back from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development on our request for grant funding, which we succeeded with. You know that we've had quite a few conversations about climate change and the environment strategy. They're in progress. We've tried to align with other work that's underway. I have mentioned Te Kato Kapiti and the Kapiti Whaitua process. The health strategy, extra engagement with the health sector, and that's because that's what they wanted. But that is on the go. You know this year that we're going to be holding a health summit where everyone's coming together to have a good conversation about the action plan that we want that's going to sit with that. The creativity and culture strategy, I know that is near and dear to a few councillors' hearts. We've talked about this. It's a priority to have delivered in year 3. I want to let you know it is in the work program you're going to see for 2025. It was slower than you wanted it to go in 2024, so just acknowledging that. Freedom camping bylaw, we've done some additional analysis that is moving swiftly through. It's going to be a feature of what you look at this year. The policy work program shifted from December. It's coming through to SOF next month. Road naming and reserve naming policy, that was a specified thing on the work program last year. However, during the policy work program update, we shifted that, and that was part of an approval we sought. And then obviously the update on Te Kato Kapiti through several resolutions you made during the year and in the course of that discussion, some of the things we thought were going to happen shifted out. So we're just recognising that for you.
I'm just seeing one question or comment. So,
Oh,
Councillor Coe.
Yeah, thank you. Look, just a question about the creativity and culture strategy. Is there information somewhere on what the approach will be for that and the timing? Because, you know, we've only got
Yep.
a short amount of time left.
No, that's okay. What I might do is when we get to 2025, I'm going to target that item so that we can talk about what's proposed and what we believe is coming through. So if that's okay, Liz? Yeah, can we hold that?
So long as we cover it off
No,
today,
we will.
because there's so many people hanging on, you know, on this, and I get asked about it a lot, and
That's
I would
okay.
like to know what, you know.
Yeah, we'll make sure that gets covered.
I'll
off
make
the
sure
council
we cover that
notices.
off in our
Thank you.
2025. I guess I'm just publicly acknowledging, I know that's an area that you guys really talked a lot to us about in 24. It's definitely on our list in 2025, and I'll show you where.
Councillor Pravanov.
Yes, actually no, I'll wait until we get to the next page.
All right, cool.
Cool. So what we've attempted to do is to say that we have pushed things out and talked about things. You've seen we've got SOF, we've got briefings, we've got SSC, we've got SES, we've got council. I just need to be clear. I did not go through all of the committee agendas or work programs and say, did we hit everything we needed to? I think that's an exercise that can be done in those forums and then it can come back together. Today, I just wanted to focus on what we talked about around this committee and just to show you that everything that you said to us that we originally talked about next year, we have done something with the acknowledgement of those things that I put on the page earlier. So the point of achieved is not to say we've finished it and it's all done. It was just to say you had it on your work program that it was something you wanted to be looking at and doing. We have been. That's what that means. So I just want to be clear about that. Where it put achieved asterisks but delayed is just to signal what I said before. Some things progressed slightly more slowly and that was for a variety of reasons, but we did talk about those things. So that's what I was trying to convey. And What the mandated role and area of focus has come straight from the standing orders and delegations. So I keep bringing us back to that because that's how we developed this in the first place.
I think Councillor Pravanov had a question on this slide.
Yes, so, so thank you. I was just going to make a comment that you touched on. So basically these tables show you where, you know, what committees they go to and when there's a briefing, but it doesn't actually show you what action has been achieved. And to me, that's what counts, not having a briefing about it or having an update. And to me, that would be really important information that is lacking from this.
I think the intention of today's session that we're putting on the table is to develop the work program. As you make decisions in forums, your resolution is available online. I haven't gone through or our staff to go through every meeting to set out the resolutions you made. The reality is, if I'm honest, if I looked from the end-to-end process at even something, I'll use a policy, you know, let's use a bylaw or policy. You might talk about it in 2024. It might be the approach you talked about. You'll decide you're going to go to consultation. You'll get analysis and feedback. Then you'll approve it. That takes time. So there isn't going to be one meeting you have that you go, we've nailed it. What we do is we come up to you and say, this is what we're planning to do. Are you happy with that? You approve that up front, we do it. So what I'm signalling here is the things that you had said to us you wanted to talk about, we are doing. If there's wider interest in understanding where those things are, the policy work program will definitely, from a policy or strategy perspective, give you that. Other items that we've had on the table, you can come back and say to us that you want to understand more about a specific item or where are we at, and we can do that for you. But it wasn't what I hadn't prepared or was proposing to do today, but I do understand your point.
Okay, thank you. And I suppose where I'm coming from probably ties into what our targeted actions are that we said that we do in relation to our top 10 priorities. And it's actually basically just, you know, doing that complete audit.
Yep. Yeah, and I think we attempt to do that in our annual report. So we try to say, we've done all this stuff with you. Have we achieved the things we wanted to? And sometimes we say, a little bit more work's needed, or we're not sure we're on track. And sometimes we say, actually, it's on the go. It might be a multi-year program we're doing, but we're feeling we're doing okay. So we will keep coming back to that because we don't want to lose sight of, actually, we need to deliver those things. So maybe what I can do with you, I'm just thinking out loud here, is when we look at our top 10 priorities, maybe we can come back and go, is something still on track, hasn't been completed, and we can keep coming back to that point just so we close the loop. So happy to do that too, but it wouldn't be in what we do today.
Councillor Warwick.
Oh, my question is around the operational Zeal contract. Is this because, does it just mention Zeal because that's the only thing that's in that quarter?
The reason that that's on there is because when we did our work program in 2024, we put it on there. So I'm reporting back against what you agreed in the work program, not because I've particularly picked it out. So there was an agreement to where we do give funding out to specific groups or in specific contractual arrangements that it comes back. And so that was just to indicate that that's one of those items that you would talk about. You'll see in 2025 the social investment program, which is the wider scope of things. Okay. So this was just a particular thing you guys said you wanted to be talking about.
And so you're going to come back to us for ideas of the next quarter. That's the intention. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, because I should say, this is just what you got through in quarter 4, which was April to June 2024. So, you know, when you think about how much you're doing, if you think you're not doing much, that was just me looking at what you asked us to do for this committee, and we've done it all. There's other stuff that you've done outside of this. This does not include all the decisions that have gone to council. All the other conversations that you've had in climate and environment and social sustainability actually are, you know, risk and assurance. There's a whole range of other things happening, but when you look at this snapshot, it's a lot. That's one quarter. So I got to keep going. So this is July to September, which is from a financial perspective. When we're reporting, this was quarter one. Again, you can see that there's been a huge amount of activity. And some of the stuff we thought would originally be in soft, we've actually pushed into other forums for a variety of reasons. But there has been a lot going on in terms of what you've talked about, what you've looked at, and the decisions that you've been making through the year. And you will say that there's some commonality through quarters, because to my earlier point, usually it's not a one thing we've done it. There's a bit of a process to it. And I'll just do
I
the.
just
Sorry.
wanted to talk about the submission update. So they get approved through the Chairs Forum, but I'm wondering, they no longer come back and get tabled at council meetings retrospectively, do they? Or strategy, operations and finance, they used to. And I'm just wondering if they should. I'm just floating that idea, just so that our submissions are publicly available, and it's clear what our position are on some of these external kind of decisions.
Just a few times a year. a
Yeah, I'm
bundle
just
of
wondering
them.
about that,
Yeah.
just in a bundle
Cool.
retrospectively.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
They are available online, but that doesn't mean we've talked about it. And I think it's an opportunity to actually talk about what's coming through and how
Yeah.
we've approached it.
Kind of in an update like
Yeah,
this.
yeah, absolutely. That sounds great.
Yeah, good suggestion.
Yeah, and part of the reason we did that last year is because they were coming in so thick, we couldn't get them to come to one forum for that opportunity, so we had put the chairs.
Yeah, they were just always retrospective.
Exactly.
And we didn't have the opportunity as elected members to
Exactly.
input, so that's why we changed
Yeah.
the format. But I'm wondering if we shouldn't do both, if the retrospective
Yeah,
submission,
absolutely.
the final submission that's been signed off could be just tabled so that everybody's aware of
Perfect.
them.
As we go, I'm writing stuff down, so I've written that one down. Great idea. Yeah, and so quarter one ended up being quite a busy quarter. If you didn't feel it, it was intense, which is why it went on to 2 pages. So there was a lot of stuff that came through. There was actually some new things, so I might actually just go back. One of the things that we didn't have on soft, but which came through, was elected members' REM, expenses allowance policy. So that was an additional thing to what you'd originally thought about. We had a few contracts under delegated authority that came through the quarter, and we don't normally schedule those in because they come as they come, but it's more work. And also, we had the Ka Rewa Urupa plan change, and that was actually a result of PC2. These are big chunky things that we're working through that came to the table for you to actually have some discussion on. So, and that was quite quickly pushed through, basically because of legal decisions. So last quarter I'll talk about for 24 was October to December, which is financial year quarter 2. Again, there was actually a lot of stuff that came through. I think you guys know through 2024, we did a huge amount of work on Kapiti's vision of getting out and talking to the community, of bringing that back and saying, here's what we've heard. And so that was a big feature of the year. We've kicked into our master planning, and we're going to focus on that a lot more in 2025. We obviously had, in terms of strategic programs, Takitai Kapiti, after many years, we landed that and received a report. Housing was a big feature. And I just want to say, some of the stuff for housing went up to council. So what you see here is only a pin drop of all of the conversation in some of these areas. Economic development, there was a lot of activity. Again, you're going to see the Zeal contract come through, a regulatory update, and that was more of a generic update. And maybe I am just going to flip backwards slightly just to highlight to you guys. No, sorry. Sorry, in quarter 4, April to June, you actually also had the council's revised compliance and enforcement policy come here, and I think when we talked about that, I think that was the first time I think some of you had said you'd looked at that or got across it. So we had some new things that you weren't planning on happening but did happen. So all in all, I just wanted to highlight to you, we did actually get through what you put out. We did do a lot in 2024, and what I wanted to show you as a result of that was we did actually report against our top 10 priorities, how we're going. Taking on point your comment, Jocelyn, about actually let's come back and double check that.
Sorry, there's a bunch of questions. Are they related to these slides or the
happy
ones before?
For
Chris, too.
you to finish,
Yeah,
Chris, just what you're saying right at the moment, but I do have a question,
Okay.
sort of relevant to this time frame.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
Because I'm not going to go through this in detail. You've seen this before, but I think it's just to highlight the connection between the work of the committees and what we're reporting at year end. So we are focused on it and making sure that we are connecting up to those things. And now might be where I pause because this was just looking back at 24. And once we close this off, we'll head into, so what about 25?
I guess that's part of my question, actually. It's just forward-looking. We're talking about the new trinium, really. So what's the process with regards to new councillors coming on board and this being introduced, shall we say, and reviewed, I dare say, because we came into this with a top 10 priority, and correct me if I'm wrong, that may change coming into the new trinium with regards to priorities, say, for argument's sake. So what's going to be the process when that happens?
I'll say two things. Today, we're effectively going to focus on what we get up to through to September.
Yep.
There's the election period and usual induction, and from my experience of this training, part of that will be getting everyone who is around the table together to talk about those priorities. And yeah, of course, priorities might shift. So what I mean, I think that's a great question because we are focusing our efforts through to September on what the priorities have been set in our long-term plan, which link back to what you have put on the table. And then we start a new process into the new training. So, yeah.
I think the Chief Executive also wanted to make a comment on this topic.
Thank you. That's not my decision. I'm aware that my mic's on. Thanks, Richard.
Oh, so it's mine. Hang on.
Thanks, Councillor Halliday. So just to reiterate what Chris was saying, today is really about what we have achieved. June, we start to focus on what comes next. I really want us to stay committed to this training and not skip in and out and confuse things when there's already so much information for you to have to consider before we go into an election cycle. But rest assured, we are starting to think about the next triennium. We are starting to think about what a really nice, clear, concise induction program looks like for the new council, and how we continue to build on what I'm really pleased has been a successful triennium as far as how we have worked as one team. You know, that's probably why you are seeing so much delivery coming out of the organisation, because we have that seamless interaction, which takes the friction away and allows the business to operate at pace. So, really good question. But curiosity, but of celebration of the success that you've been able to achieve this triennium and an eye onto October.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Kirby.
This is probably a question about work that's been achieved and also moving forward. I don't see any reference to the social needs assessment in this at all. Do you want to? I'll leave that with you to address that when it's convenient to talk about it. Okay, I'm just flagging that as a concern for me that I can't see it referenced.
I think I might say, just in case there's more lights around specific items, when we get to 2025, I want you to know that we've been listening to you. we know that there's some things that are in your top 10 councillor priorities that you really are focused on, I'll highlight those ones. If at the end of that you think I've missed something, we can come back round. So I can let you know just on that topic, it's in there. Creative culture strategy in there, that's in there. And I know there's been some other things that we've talked about. Yep, it's all right. I'll point it out for you so that we can see it. But we are committed and looking at the pace at which we're coming back. I just want to be clear. This is about this committee and the conversation we have in this forum. It doesn't mean that there aren't other briefings or things ahead of it. I was just focusing on this committee. So this is not a comprehensive, every engagement you'll ever have with us on something. It's just saying we'll be bringing something here for likely a decision here. So that's what we're talking to you about, so that we can say this is kind of the pace we're looking at across the work program to come here. Some things won't be on here that you're interested in because they need to go to council. They're not written here because it's not part of the delegation for this committee. It doesn't mean we're not doing it. So that was the other thing I just want to put on the table. If you mention something though, I'll still write it down because we'll close the loop and come back, because I want to make sure that in terms of the priorities you'll set, you can see that it's got a home and it is coming through somewhere. So I do understand that. So you can see I'm trying to balance a few things, but it's definitely there. It's in there.
Councillor Pravanov.
Yeah, thank you. I have to admit, I'm a little bit confused. So this page here, this is from our annual report 23-24, whereas the other pages relating to our top 10 priorities aren't. And I happen to have the top 10 priorities, and I know that when we went through this here, we looked at some of the statuses and they were actually emerging rather than being on track. And I'm just wondering where that disconnect is actually happening. I suppose I'm relating, it's talking specifically about the climate strategy and the environment strategy, which were going to be completed in that 23-24. And so the fact that it says they're on track here, but I'm pretty certain that we had a conversation about that there were emerging issues with those.
I'm happy to comment on that. So I've used publicly available information that we've released, which is up on your screen.
Yep.
You've had a subsequent conversation with us and we're going through a process of updating and it being released somewhere. That hasn't been released yet, so I haven't put it up. So that's why I'm saying carefully. This was year 1. Year 2, we've got some things progressing through. We're going to talk about those. When that's released, everybody will have that. And I think, yes, there's some things that are still on track. You're going to see those heading into the 2025 work program. So maybe what I need to say is I'm not trying to use this forum to go, here's our progress over the last year. That's what the annual plan and our performance reporting is for. That is not this hui. I've just included these up here to give some context and reference so you can see the link between the work program and your priorities and where we've reported on things to date. The annual plan and our performance reports will come through and you'll be able to talk about those and close it out through that process. We wouldn't do that today, if that's all right.
Okay, thank you.
I think carry on.
Yeah, cool. I'm just going to flick quickly because you've seen this and it's not really the discussion area. Now we're diving into discussion land. So this is where we are putting up a raft of things that are on the work program that we think are coming here for discussion, for update, for whatever, Justice Committee. So what you're looking at is the delegations for the committee as per standing orders with one caveat for obvious reasons, which is they're more reactive items rather than proactive ones. We have not put any items in about reviewing and approving community contracts, receiving annual reports from any community or advisory group, considering and confirming recommendations made by subcommittees or making recommendations to council on matters of interest to the committee. Those things will inevitably happen through this period. We're just not putting them in as items for you to look at and discuss because some of them we don't know. They'll emerge through time. So just acknowledging they are in the delegations though, so it is part of what this committee can do. We have put in the areas of focus and work that's in track per the long-term plan and the priorities. Your top 10 priorities, they're obviously in the LTP, so it's all the stuff you know and love. If it wasn't part of our LTP conversation, it won't be in what you're going to see right now. So I'm just being clear about that. We haven't added new. We're working to the plan that we had set with you. And we've recently discussed through the annual plan process of what's coming through. Separate to this discussion, ideally, the Climate Environment and Social Sustainability Committee will be looking at what they have on their agendas. As we go through, we might decide or determine that some of the things on here might drop into those committees, and actually some of them might go up to council. So that will go through the process as last year. I just noted here, the top 10 priorities on the next pages are shared for context. I'm not intending to have an in-depth discussion with this with you. We have that in other places. So today it's just about the work program. And we have not put any information in Q3, October to December, just in recognition of the election period. So the memo that originally came to you in the pack said we're going to go to July, we've gone to September. So we've got all the things that we're going to be working right up to your deadline with you on, and we'll see and test with you if anything's missing. So again, you know your priorities. I'm not going to go through this in detail. It was just to say you've set them. They sit in our long-term plan. So Q3, which is January to March, the quarter in right now, we've just set out under strategic, financial and operational a series of things that we're going to talk about. My proposition is that I'm just going to go through the 3 quarters so we can see all the items, and then I'll stop. So in our strategic section, you're going to see we're going to come and talk to you about the approach for a refresh of our stormwater management strategy. That we'll be looking to get approval to consult on our climate mitigation and environment strategies. So we've had quite a bit of conversation about those. We've got some upcoming briefings to talk about the shape of them. That's our intention. Approach for the supporting strategy of creativity and culture. So that's in this quarter up there. You'll see on the side there the link to the top 10 priorities. So last time we did this, you said to me, Chris, it would be great if you could show the link to the top 10 priorities. That's on the side, just to show you that we are focused on those. Review of strategies, plans, policies and bylaws. The policy work program is coming through, and also approval to consult for the freedom camping policy that we talked to you about last year. Economic development for this committee. We have the operating strategy. You saw that last year. We agreed we were coming back to finesse it and get your approval on that. There's also going to be an update on the Regional Infrastructure Fund. Now, I know that you know there's work underway around things like the Economic Development Trust and our new operating model. That goes to council. It's not going to be in this committee's work program, but it is happening. So liaison and planning, we're going to give you a bit of an update on the Kapiti Whai tour. GW and KCDC are working together on that. So we'll come back and do a check-in. Again, I have put contracts under delegated authority, but take that as given it'll be and where we need to. Preparation for the district plan. We've obviously already talked about priority for the coastal plan change. We are also talked about, or will be shortly here, actually, the approach for the potential urban development panel. SSC recently talked about that, but it will be coming here. And also just an update on the RMA amendments bill and implications, and that was something we promised to come back to talk to you about regarding PC2 and our next steps. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about that. Social investment programs in there. Shelley, your question about, hey, Zeal, is there anything else? You're going to hear about everything else through that. Regulatory update. I think this has been an area of focus, and I'm going to be coming back to talk to you about an approach for improvement program and our subsequent steps from Morrison Lowe report. And that's not just me. Sean, Brendan and I are working together in the background on some of the things we're doing. So we'll be giving you a bit of an insight to that and what you can expect to see from us. And then the submissions update, but to your point, Janet, sorry, I was thinking I was going to call you Madam Mayor, but I'll say Janet. We will include the point that it comes back to this committee on a regular basis, just to say here's what's come through and to have a bit of a conversation about it. I'm going to go to the second page, which is going to be Q4, which is April to June. Same settings, under strategic. We are going to be coming back on the master plan. So we are going to start to talk to you in June to March through briefings and such things about what we're getting up to, what we're going to do, and what we think the phases of it are. So we'll be coming back to look to get some decisions on some things. We're going to have the KCDC outcomes report that you'd previously talked about, the outcomes and where does it take us. We're going to be bringing the recovery plan and work program through. I just want to note that the Risk and Assurance Committee sees us and talks to us about that, but any approvals we have obviously need to come through our committees. And the accessibility approach. That is on the work program, it's under inclusion and accessibility. So we're coming to talk to you about that and what we're thinking to do. We've got in there analysis of submissions for Freedom Campaign. We have the approval of the operating strategies for climate mitigation and environment, and that's post feedback from our community. So we will be bringing that to you, and then we'll be saying, let's go. And we're going to have an update on Water's bylaw and backflow prevention policy. We started that conversation last year, so it's just that next step. There's one here under overviewing strategic programs that says follow up on agreed coastal hazard non-statutory work. Last time we talked to you, we said we'd come back and just say there was some interest in triggers, signals and thresholds. What we're really wanting to do is come back and say we've had a look at that and what options we think there are to do the work and the timing of it. So it's not that we've done the work, it's more we're just saying you said you want us to come back, we will. We've got our usual EDKB 6-monthly update, which will be due. We won't be looking for decisions here around standing up the new trust, but we're talking about some of the next steps that are coming through. Again, an update on the Kapiti Whai tour. There's quite a bit of conversation happening in that space, so we'll just let you know where we've got to and what's happening and if there's any implications. You'll see under financial management, we've got the LGFA, which is usual. The district plan. So in this quarter, we're going to talk to you about PC2 decisions. And that's the follow-up from some that we owe you, and also just the priorities for the district plan. So that's every training we come through and ask you to help us work out what's most important. That's actually going to link back to some of the work we're doing around master planning, so that we can start to look at everything. So from recently, we've talked about coastal provisions. We've also had people talking to us about, hey, you know, PC do some of our areas like our Waikanai garden precinct. How will we manage those? We're going to look at all of that with you and say, what's most important? Where should we be leaning into the future? We have an approval of some private plan changes. So we've got a few coming through, and we've got a couple we'll be talking to you about. And we're going to have a regulatory update in this forum. So we're actually going to share with you an assessment of our current state. And what I mean by that is some of you have asked questions about information around what's the end-to-end time frame for some things. You know, how does this happen? We're going to be coming back and sharing that and talking to you about how we might be more transparent and open about releasing some of that information just more generally. Submissions update. This is our last quarter one. So this is where, under strategic, Stakeholder feedback on vision company. It's just assuming decisions happen, okay? So if you don't agree to do stuff will shift. We've got master planning in there. We're going to be talking about town centre planning and review of the growth strategy. We'll have approval of the new KCDC outcomes report, looking at feedback on our recovery plan. Social needs assessment, I'm just going to highlight that one for you, right in there.
Thanks for fixing my blindness. I
That's
appreciate
okay.
it.
But I want to say that won't be the only engagement we have, obviously. So just want to be really clear. We're just going to have a point in time to come back. We think there'll be something that we have a decision for then. We've obviously got Freedom Camping popping up. The draft supporting strategy, creativity and culture, we're going to be looking for you to approve that. We've got the approach for supporting strategy on community safety. So that's one we owe you. And we have been talking about it in 2024, but it's coming up to be something that we've said we're going to do some next steps and progress on this year. We'll be looking for the approval of the operating strategy for health and its action plan. And we're also going to be looking at the state of the environment report. Now, that's something that's owed around our environment strategy. We're obviously going to engage with the Climate and Environment Committee, but for here, we'll be looking to get some decisions. We've got our housing needs assessment and the housing strategy. We're just talking about approach now because it's starting to come up that we're going to have to do some stuff. We've got under economic development, the approach for the Māori Economic Development Strategy and Wellbeing Plan. I just want to be clear, this is, again, we're going to be in a point of decision. There's actually quite a bit of conversation underway at the moment around that. Review of the Major Events Fund. You know that we have been out doing that review. Interviews are underway. We're going to be coming back to go, here's what we found, here's some recommendations. In advance of that, we will brief you, of course, on what we found. We will be in the Major Events Fund round, so we'll be looking for an allocation approval. Again, we've got the steps to set up the new trust and associated settings because there'll be a few things that we need to get some agreement on. We are going to come back and talk to you about the Wellington Leadership Committee. One of the things that we were talking about internally is, although a lot of work has been happening, we haven't actually really checked in and said, here's what's going on, so we'd look to do that here. Our usual performance reporting. In terms of district plan and changes, we're going to be coming back talking to you about inclusionary zoning. There's going to be another private plan change we're expecting in this quarter. We will be doing regular regulatory reporting to this committee, and we want to have a space to talk to you around feedback from the sector around some of the priorities we have to work together. So we're looking at some opportunities to have a more interactive interaction with our community on the things that might be a bit sticky or challenging and how we move through those. And then down the bottom is our submission. So back to the earlier point, we'll change that so it reflects that we'll be coming back with an update and a space for a chat.
I think there's quite a few questions or comments at this point, so maybe we
Well, that's
pause
it.
here. Yeah. Great. Okay, Councillor Warwick.
I did email you while we were talking about. I don't know that it fits in here or where it fits, but under economic development, where there's no mention anywhere in any of this about the Cycleway Walkway Bridleway Network or the Trails Trust and where that fits in. And that's actually quite a big thing for economic development.
It is, and I think as part of the EDKB's usual update to this committee, they would talk about that, but it wouldn't necessarily be an item that we brought to this committee. There's conversations that I think have been happening in the Climate Environment Committee and a bunch of other places. So that's what I was trying to say. It's happening, but it might not be noted in this committee. Yep. Do you want to?
Talk to us, yes?
Yeah. Yeah. Do I need to do mine?
Yeah, so, sorry, the Trails Trust is definitely on the list of things being looked at by the EDKB, so that's very much on the radar. So there are things happening there in terms of how we fund some feasibility studies and what have you. So yeah, it definitely hasn't been forgotten about. But as Chris says, is coming, is indirectly there, via the EDKB as opposed to coming direct to council. But yeah, it's very much in the sights of the EDKB.
Not mentioned in documents anywhere.
No, because it's
Even in our
under
priorities.
EDKB, yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Warwick. Did you have any further questions? Okay. Do you want to just pop your mic off? Sorry. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I have a similar concern to Shelley, actually. And I've expressed my concerns before about the EDKB, that it just doesn't become a giant rug under which a whole bunch of issues get swept, and that we just lose sight of what's happening. So if EDKB are going to come back to us every 6 months, I'm assuming there must be a process for updating, well, more frequently than that. But so I'll acknowledge that the arts and creativity is in there, pages 6 and 20, I believe. Yep, and yeah, we'll make some good progress this year, I think. I do have a question around Maori Economic Development Fund. So the Te Whakaminenga meeting that's coming up, it's an item in there. Do we have any say or an involvement or anything, the broader council, around that, or is that just something that goes into that group and that's where all the decisions are made? Do we need to involve ourselves at all, or is that just not part of the deal? I don't know. Yeah, because I see there was I think there's a sum of $72,000 for.
Sorry.
Yeah.
After that small incident, I have my mic back. Apologies. Effectively, my understanding is in this triennium, we have delegated that fund and the decisions around it to that committee. And so they are making those decisions, they are released, it goes through a process, and at this stage, it does not come back to this committee.
Okay. And my next point was around the Wellington Leadership Committee. Just warning, Fran Wild is back on track as be the new mayor of South Wairarapa, so she'll give you as a good shake-up. Look forward to those meetings. And yeah, I just note that in terms of community interaction, so at some stage presumably we'll have an elected members briefing or meeting just around some protocols around that. So community interaction's great. In an election year, community interaction becomes a different animal. And it'd be really good to have some kind of protocols around that. Rules of engagement as much as anything else.
I can just note, I know Darren mentioned earlier that we've got a package we're going to come and talk to you about, and that is in there. Wouldn't be this committee that comes to, but can acknowledge yes. And I'll just note that down so I can pass it on to colleagues, but absolutely.
Mayor Holbrook.
So I had a few questions. Just let me bring up the page. What a lot's going on. Isn't it incredible? Yeah. What we used to have was, I just wanted to kind of ask why it's in this format, because we had councillors kind of struggling to find things. We had 2 instances where a major piece of work, they couldn't actually spot it. So what we used to have in this committee was like a big A3, and it had coloured bars, like a timeline with the strategies and policies. Maybe if we still have that, that could sit alongside this as a piece of information so that people can see where the strategy, policy, bylaw, work program is. And they were colour-coded, legislatively required strategies, policies, and another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I comment?
Does that still exist?
It's coming. So that's
There's
the
the
policy
policy
work
work
program. So the policy work program comes up twice a year.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was talking about earlier. It's coming in March to this committee for you to have a look at. So this
Great.
is more this committee's work program. The policy work program is the organisation's
it's
work
kind of
program.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But it's what's coming here. That's what we were talking about today. So
Brilliant.
yeah, but it does
That's
exist and it
clear.
is coming.
That's clear. Cool. So I just the KCDC outcomes report. Could you talk me through that? I'm not quite familiar with what.
Off the back of our Vision Kapiti work, last year we talked to you guys about what we heard back from our community. You know how we've got place, people and partnership, and underneath, for example, people, we've got things about housing and work and income, etc. We are actually going to come back and give you some information on, so how's it going in our district? If we're doing a bunch of work and working with other people, are we focused on the things that look like they're going well? Are there gaps in that maybe we want to think about? So how that might help us is, you know, if we're thinking about areas for advocacy, there might be things in there that we might be missing. So we're looking at what data is available to, not all the time talk about it, but to be looking at when we say we're doing things, that we're able to show effectively value for money and why we do what we do, or if we're advocating, for example, is it helping? So we want to be able to close the loop on some of those questions. So you guys have seen the outcomes that we've been talking about. So we've tested some of those with you. Obviously, there's different quarters here. We're coming back with more information and work on that with you. In the background, we've been looking at data that's available to help us understand how we're doing, how we're going as a community.
So how does the outcome report kind of sit alongside and interact with our thirdly reports? How's it different?
So the thirdly reports are focused on our performance, and we've set, for want of better words, goals/targets through the long-term plan that we report against. We'll be reporting on wider things than what we've set targets against. Maybe the way that I can frame it for you is it's more a contextual understanding of our community as a whole about how's things going, rather than this is how we're performing. So just as an example, if I was to say to you, we get regular information on work, on employment, on education, we don't give it to you, but we have it. So we would just be surfacing some of it to say, this year, actually, in Kapiti, we've had, this is a made up number by the way, 25% more people have made it into employment. Or, you know, we talk about youth unemployment. Actually, the trend's on an increase. You know, when we say we have a priority on youth, the data's telling us we need to keep going with that. Or if it's on the downward trend, does that mean when we start to talk about where we're heading in our priorities, that that's maybe not something that we're seeing as a need in the community? So we're seen as contextual information to help us understand, along with what we hear from the community, where we really might think about council's efforts and energy. It's a bit of a gap we have at the moment.
Right. How does it interact and sit alongside the social needs assessment, which is about gathering all that data and that picture?
It's very connected.
Yeah, okay.
So we're going to come back and talk about it, but it's more, we want to be able to say we've got outcomes, we're regularly tracking and looking at those at periods of time which make sense. The social needs assessment is dropping down, it's asking more targeted questions of different parts of our community potentially. This is just core data. So, you know, when I talk about unemployment information, it's just available. So it's not, let me say it the right way, we're not taking a huge amount of effort and energy to pull this together. It's more we're surfacing information that exists to help us understand if we want to look down at some things and understand it more. Because looking at a high-end number, if youth unemployment starts to go up, that number's not going to tell you why. And it might be something that we say, hey, we need to work with MSD, we need to work with schools and see has something changed, is there a greater need? It might be something that you want to advocate for. It doesn't mean that council's going to do something, but it's just information about what's going on in our community. With a view in mind that we said we are supporting thriving and
It just sounds like what we had in mind for the core work for a social needs assessment. And if it is part of the work of the social needs assessment, it would be good to be identifying that we are starting work towards that in April to June not in the next quarter along?
I think
Unless it's different and separate.
No, I think what I might do is come back, and if that's not clear, we'll come back and talk about how it fits together. I think in this forum, I'm not going to deep dive into the outcomes versus the social needs assessment, other than to
fair
say
enough.
that the social needs assessment is I think a far more deep diving exercise. It's hearing from the sector. It's a bunch of stuff that just one little bit of data doesn't tell you. So, and we're also not going to do a social needs assessment every year. So we would have some key things that we can just track to see, is there something emerging that we want to be mindful of? Could be on safety, well, sometimes we talk about safety issues in the district. Might be useful to know what's
sounds really
happening.
Useful.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in the introduction, like for instance, the EDKB would report to council, but it's in here, and also the steps to stand up a new trust are in here.
So there's some elements of what we would be doing that would come to this committee. There's some that won't. So, for example, decision on the establishing the trust, the setup of it, the appointment of people to the panel, all that sort of stuff that we did with the Housing Trust, went to council. It is likely that we would have things that we're working on, for example, as the draft business plan for the new organisation develops. It might be something that could come here for an initial conversation before it pops up to council. But that kind of distinction. But what we can do, if it's useful, is we can say, here's what's coming through, these are the bits that are going to go to these different places, because there's actually quite a bit of stuff going on in the economic development space, not all of which, because it's decisions, is going to come here, it's going to go up to council. So I was just trying to distinguish between that, because there will be some things that we think are well placed to come here.
No, I don't think we need a document to outline that, as long as they come to the right place. I think it's
Okay.
fine. The Kapiti Whai Tour updates, I'm wondering if they could sit quite comfortably in the Climate and Environment Committee, because seeing as they're updates, just a thought. The follow-up on PC2 decisions and priorities for district plan. The approval on private plan changes. Just checking that sits here as well. No, I just checked in the delegations and it does. I just want to talk about creative and culture strategy. It's described as a supporting strategy. What does that mean?
So you
It's a
recall,
new term for me.
Yep, in our strategic architecture, the triangle that we looked at last year, and we are repositioning all of our organisational things. We have 5 what we're calling operational strategies, which are economic development, housing, health, climate, separated to mitigation as a start and splitting those off, and environment, thanks. There are some other strategies we're doing, but they are the next layer down, and this is one of them. Conceivably, that strategy actually will link to all of the ones that I just mentioned above. There'll be elements in there that connect to it. So what we're trying to do is get a bit more, it isn't a hierarchy of being able to link things together. At the moment, we have a bunch of strategies and seemingly there's no connection between some of them. So we're just trying to layer them and say, here's how they fit together. You recall last year that we had the age-friendly approach that we tabled. So we're going to have a couple that sit up there, operating strategies, and then some strategies that sit underneath those. So beginning of the year, I know, we'll come back as we start to get into this and just remind you that that's where we've got to. And the reason we're doing it is so that we've got better connectivity and alignment to some of the work we're doing to ensure that we've got the right focus.
Yeah, I recall that's where we got to, but the supporting strategy terminology wasn't something that I was familiar with, that was all.
Okay.
I just didn't really know whether it meant it's supporting other strategies or whether we're saying we're supporting the arts and not actually delivering.
Oh, right.
Do you see
No,
what I mean?
absolutely not.
I was just
not
wanting
that.
just wanting that clarification.
Yep.
In the strategies here, accessibility strategy, I think the advisory group are expecting work on that. Maybe I haven't seen it.
No, I'll go back just for completeness. Whoops, right there. Under setting and approving policy, accessibility approach. So the accessibility strategy, so it's fourth bullet point down under setting and approving policy and strategy work
Got it.
program.
Yeah, great. Just aware, if we're looking at the work program for this committee, and we've got operational things like contracts under delegated authority here, I'm not seeing the thirdly reports, which I think come here on this list.
I'll go back. Just one moment.
That's a heavy work program for this committee. For one.
So we have one here, under financial Q1, July to September, KCDC performance report. So I've just called it the KCDC performance report.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it is coming through.
Great, thank you. That's my long list of questions completed. Thank you for your patience.
No problem. Councillor Coe.
Okay, I'm going to harp on about culture and creativity again, I'm sorry. So assuming that's coming, that the approach is coming to SOF, there's only one more SOF meeting and that's on the 13th of March. So can we assume that there will be something at that meeting around the approach for the strategy?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, I'll just briefly say, you had, I think, made it clear last year that it's something you're really focused on.
Yep.
We have been talking to the EDKB about the component of work that relates to this and our creativity cluster. So we're going to be coming back and saying to you, this is exactly what we're doing, here's where it's coming back, and this is what you can expect, so that we're cracking on with it this year. We know it's a priority.
Okay, so I'm presuming there is some thought around what that approach might look like. I mean, given that I also sit on the EDKB,
Yep.
it hasn't really been a big feature of conversations at the EDKB.
Yeah. So
I'm just really worried because I do have some thoughts on how we could progress that, and I'm not just wondering where the conversations are happening and how I can potentially
I might be able to.
input into those.
Yeah, I might be able to chat offline. I can just note that at the board-only component of the EDKB meetings,
Yeah.
there has been an allocation of a board member to the creativity strategy.
Yes, that's right. I'm aware of
And
that.
yeah, and so that is where that's been driven by working with us. And we are also looking at the moment how we can complement some of the existing work that's underway, such as the art trail, with that work that's proceeding.
Oh yeah, Trish received some money from the Parapara Umu Community Board the other night, Trish? So thanks for coming to yeah. Thank you, Trish. Great to see you. Oh, that's okay. That's okay, Trish. Bye. See you later. Taekwondo, yeah. So Trish got $750 to support with her Taekwondo classes the other night.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. Sorry, where were we at?
I'll talk to you offline.
I was
Chris.
just going to
Okay,
say,
yeah.
I'll catch up because I can see there's
Great.
interest. That's great.
Okay.
Sorry, before we go to Councillor Pravanov, I'm just going to quickly ask a question because I can.
Yes, thank you.
Can I? Oh no, you go. I was just
yeah.
going to say I thought you were chatting with Rob, so I'll ask a
Yeah,
question.
no,
but-
no, no. It's all, yeah, no, it's good. Thank you. So thank you, Chris and team, for putting all this together. I've got a couple of two lines of questioning here. The first one relates to what Shelley was talking about earlier on in terms of the CWB and progressing that work and how it relates to the Economic Development Board. I don't know what relationship there is between the two and whether there's an expectation that the CWB feeds into economic development, or how is that actually working?
I think what I'm going to say is I can see there's some interest in that. I'm going to propose that we might just come and do a short briefing to you so we can have a chat
Yeah, I feel like
rather
it's
than
a
try and
bigger
land it in here.
conversation than trying to land it in
It
a work
is.
program. Yeah.
What I can say is they're talking to each other. There is a connection, but we'll come and talk to you about it. So I'll write that down as an item of interest. Does
Yeah,
that sound okay?
Yeah, and I suppose maybe CWB members there coming back to us to say, you know, what they're doing to inform the Economic Development Board of what their priorities are as well.
Yep. And I
From
think
those two members here.
there are good conversations happening and there is a common focus and there's opportunities coming up, I think, in economic development to really support the Trails Trust and
I think
also
that's
their
good.
aspirations. So we'll come back and close the loop and make sure that we cover that off. So I've written that one down.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then my other one, and it sort of touches a bit on what Janet was saying. So she asked what the word supporting strategies meant, and I suppose I'm also, you know, I saw the word operating strategies here, and you know, specifically, you know, I know we've talked about the climate strategy and the environment strategy. So it says here, so I'm just wondering what, to me, an operating strategy sits below the main strategy, but we haven't actually landed that strategy. And then also too, it says that, and I assume that it's the fourth quarter is actually, actually no, the third, so it says here in the third quarter, which I assume it says January to March, which is actually this current quarter. Is that correct?
Yes, sorry, because it's financial years.
Yeah, okay. Because it says here, and it's coming to this committee, approval to consult with operating strategies, climate and mitigation and environment. So that must be occurring at the next meeting, but there's nothing on the agenda for the CES meeting, which is next week, about this. So I don't understand how all this is happening. Well, you know, I don't understand the process.
Sure. So linked back to 2024 and my earlier comments about the fact that we started off with SOF going, wow, there's all this stuff we want to do. And then we said, oh, some of the stuff is going to have to go to CES, some will go to social sustainability, some is going to go to briefings, and some's gone to RSC actually. So they've gone to different places. We are going to brief you on the work that's coming to this meeting. Part of the reason for this is that this is a long-standing discussion we've been having on these strategies. You made a decision last year to enable us to meet timing requirements. There's a briefing. So there's a briefing in the diary. Also, we think it's important that everyone round the table is able to engage in that. And that's why we've chosen to do that. So that was a decision we made just for this. As best we can, we try and line up with the other committee dates.
Yeah, and that's fine with me. And I suppose I'm just double checking that something is going to happen.
Absolutely.
So the other question I asked was about the difference between a strategy versus an operating strategy.
So at the very top of our hierarchy is vision capita. So we've got vision capita and the outcomes that our community told us were important to them. That work is sitting there. What our community said to us, and in fact the data that we do have available is indicated to us, is the operating strategies are focused on the big things in the community that are either changing or a massive challenge that we think we need to activate on and do something. And what I mean by that is health, climate, environment, housing and ED. They are conceivably issues that require a whole of community and a whole of nation attention. So that's why they're sitting up there. We're trying to deliver on the things that our community has indicated to us are what they want to do. So that's how those things fit together. Just in between those, though, we put in the approaches like age-friendly approach. because we've recognised in our community ensuring that we have a focus on that is critical because of the composition of our community. And so that is going through all of the work that we do. We're trying to apply that lens and go, are we making sure that we've thought of the things that are in that approach as we drive and do things? That's what we're trying to do. So the idea is anything else we're doing is hopefully delivering up to the things that join up to us achieving change for our community. So that's why we've laid them slightly differently. I need to be careful and say to you, we've done that so someone who looks at what we're up to in the district can easily find the link to things. A supporting strategy is as important as an operating strategy is important to an approach. They're not less important. It's just that they've got a place so that you can see the connection. So when we develop, the creativity and culture strategy, it's a supporting strategy. It's a thing we're doing and we're driving stuff. That's what we're saying we're doing, working in the community. It's a thing. So it has its own place. We're just layering it. That's all we're doing. So I just want to be really clear about that.
Yeah, because I suppose it talks about the operations the strategies for environment and climate, but there's no strategy. We don't have a strategy for those yet.
No, we're doing the work to have them.
But it says here operating strategies. Maybe I'm getting too...
I think that maybe you're thinking of an implementation plan.
Well, no, I'm just reading the exact words that says here. It says operating strategies. And to me, that's an action plan versus a strategy that talks about, I suppose, the reasoning for, for the strategy. What I basically overall.
Yep. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write that one down as something I'll just come back and check in with you guys about our strategic architecture and how that's fitting together and what it means. And then if after we have that chat, we're going, hang on a second, we can work through that. I don't think we're going to be able to satisfy that today in this conversation, but I've noted it down.
So I suppose so there will be some briefings between now and next month on the detail of those two strategies.
There is one next Tuesday around the climate mitigation.
Yeah, hopefully it's in all your diaries.
That's not environment though.
No, the environment. Is there an environment one in the diary?
So we've got dates lodged in. In fact, do you know what, Jocelyn? I think I might come back to you offline and have a chat.
Okay.
I have circulated to you and Sophie, given your leadership in the climate environment strategy, just the timeframes that we're proposing to come through. So maybe we'll have a chat about that and just check that we are.
Yeah, I suppose the reason I'm actually asking these detailed questions is we're basically approving this today, and I don't want these things to start.
We're not approving it.
Today. We're approving it in March.
What does it say? The wording is.
We're noting that we've had a conversation.
This is just an update.
Part of that recommendation. What
and that the final work program setting up the upcoming reports and focus for committee decision will be tabled for approval in March.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
So today we're chatting, basically, so I can hear from you.
Okay.
This is in the update section of today's meeting.
Okay.
And anything you're saying to me, we're writing down. If you think about something later and you want to come back to me, do it.
Okay.
And I'm going to work with Sophie and Liz offline before we bring something back to make sure that we've got everything we need. And just remember, we can add to. So this doesn't lock us into the only things you're going to do. We can shift and add stuff, but it's a start if a tend to say, hey, this is broadly what we're wanting to do together.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pavanov. I'm just going to throw in a quick question because it's kind of relevant to that as well. So we're looking to approve consultation starting on the climate and environment operating strategies this quarter, but then I'm not seeing in the work program when those come back and are approved, but maybe again I missed.
No, and I think back to the comment that the Mayor's made, I'd put this up this way today because it was a chat. When we come back in March, it's going to be one document that's like an A3 landscape, everything's together. It might be easy to read. I thought this would be easier to go through. Maybe not.
It's been really helpful.
No, I'm just going to go back to where it is.
So April.
There it is.
June says approval.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Approval of the operating strategy health and action plan.
No, it comes beforehand.
It's in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
You've got
That's
it?
April to June.
Yeah. So it is in there. So what we've done is said, and the problem is this is not like here's a briefing, here's this, here's that. I'm just giving you where we're coming back to go a decision. That's what we're coming back to you with. There will be briefings. Briefings are getting put in your diaries. So we will talk about it before it comes here. And if there's any questions or things or concerns, that will have been able to be tested before we go and just sign up to it. What I do want to say is around climate, particularly mitigation and environment, I think there has been quite a bit of conversation in 2024. We haven't lost that. We're bringing it with us. And so it is next week. I forget my dates, but next week when we have a chance to look at our mitigation strategy approach, it's going to be familiar. There'll be a couple of things where we're saying to you, this is where we think it's shifting because it's only mitigation. But hopefully you're going to feel like, hey, we're on a journey. And in fact, we'll be sending out a large document on Friday, which has got a whole ton of information on here's where we've come from, here's where we are, this is what we want to talk to you about. So we're going to do our usual stuff. We'll be making sure that you're across things before you're asked to make a decision. So that I can promise you.
Yep, cool. And the only other thing, like just in terms of these timeframes, is making sure that once we close for submissions, that we then have enough time to get across those submissions, incorporate feedback, and then, hoping that the timeframes aren't pushed out because of that process, but also wanting to honour the submissions that we have received and do due diligence. So I think it is going to be quite tight. But yeah, I just want to make that point that it's important that if we open for submission, that we hear that and we...
Absolutely. And I will reiterate, we've actually had a huge amount of feedback to date. Yeah. So just remembering, we actually went out through Vision Kapiti. We had events on climate, on environment. We've had a survey on climate, which is still very relevant of what our community's thinking. But that's all going to be in the briefing that you get next week, just to reassure you. And of course, when we go out and say, here's where we landed, what do you think? We'll be coming back and letting you know, as we normally do through our usual processes. So all of that is built into this. So we will be doing that. And I do acknowledge the challenge of only looking at this committee's work program is all of that's missing. So I completely understand. We will come back on each item as we usually do and let you know those kinds of details. But have noted the ones that particular people are interested in, and I'll make sure we close the loop.
Great, thank you. A couple more questions from people. Councillor Cofford.
Oh, thank you, Sophie, and thank you, Chris. Yes, Councillor Warwick and I are on the CWB. We're delegates to the CWB, so we'll be watching the EDKB input very closely there. Thank you. Look, you mentioned Plan Change 2 and the Operative District Plan, the Waikanai Gardens Circle, and we've got the Otahanga development and one or two others in the district. I was just wondering about the timeline that is involved with these. It would be really good to have a briefing, a planning briefing as soon as possible, because things are really moving. When we discussed the urban panel last Tuesday, there was quite a lot of mixed sort of messages about timing. One councillor wanted it to be put on hold for a while, and one said we're kicking the can down the road again. We need to be doing this about 2 years ago. Well, I think we really have to get cracking on these planning issues in the district because I think we're just sort of kicking the can down the road while things are really happening. So can we bring that forward as a priority?
So we actually have a briefing at the Climate and Environment Committee at the next one on the RMA and the implications of the RMA and what might be coming through for a discussion. I've proposed that it's coming to this committee as well. I normally don't do that, but I think there's some relevant things for us to consider around the whole implications of the changes that do have impacts for things like our decision making around the timing of some of the changes. So I'm going to try and put Jason on the table, and he will say to you, it would be awful to decide to start a plan change and then national direction change, which we need to follow, that we have to rework and do more work it takes longer.
Yeah.
We're trying to be and give you information about what's happening, about the concrete things that are happening and what it means, so we can be a bit more certain about what we do. So that's definitely on the table. If you want to join in the discussion at the Climate Environment Committee or listen to it, it's next week, but it will come here as well. So we've got a series of discussions we're bringing to you. We're at a time with the district plan where we're looking to reset. We still do have things on the go. We are in the RMA Schedule 1 process for some of those things already, and so we need to see those through. So Jace is going to be coming to the table to talk to you about that, where things are at, what's the next priority, other than the fact you've told us that coastal's a priority. We've got that one, we know that. We're going to come back to you and talk to you about what that looks like. So we have that scheduled for April. That's what we'd said we'd do, and we're on track to do that. And that's not coming to this committee, that's going to be going to council. So that's what I mean about there's a whole ton of things underway. What we're proposing when we come through with things like our policy work program is to go through the whole lot so that you can settle and have a little look-see at what the current timing is. So the senior management team has been looking at all of these things. So we're ready to come and have a chat. We're aiming for March for that with you. So that's happening there. And then there's more deep dives that we go into. So if that makes sense.
Does that answer the question? I think, yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
and I'll just come in offline and
Yeah,
discuss
come
it with
chat to
you.
me.
Okay.
Come
Great,
chat to me.
thank you, Councillor Cockford.
Oh, no, sorry, I thought you said the plan change. Sorry, I misheard. I thought you said plan change. Oh, no, we've got the urban design panel in here. Sorry, that was me
I think Rob was hoping
mishearing.
we could shift it to tomorrow or something. Make a decision.
Get the urban design panel going a little bit more.
Here it is, the approach for potential urban development panel. So it's in there. So it's a design panel, sorry. It should say urban design panel. Yeah, so we just went to SSC. We have a recommendation we'll be bringing up, so that is coming. Sorry, I should have said that. It's in there. That should say design, not development. And then we're going to be coming through, as we discussed, assuming that this committee approves doing so, on the track that we said. So absolutely. Sorry, I misheard that.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to the arts and creativity strategy. And as the conversations have gone, it seems like under the rubric of the EDKB, things like the Arts Trail, the CWB, the Arts and Creativity Strategy, or a hub, or a cluster, or whatever it is. So when the EDKB was being set up, my understanding was that it was going to be independent of political interference. They were just going to do their thing. Now, that being the case, they would set their priorities. I really am uncomfortable with the EDKB determining what the priorities are if on that list of priorities are things like the Arts Trail and the Arts and Creativity Strategy and CWB.
I'm not sure this is entirely relevant to the soft work plan conversation.
It is in terms of the strategy. So we located on pages 6 and 20 the Arts and Creativity Strategy. My understanding is that strategy would be determined here. It now looks like it might be getting determined by the EDKB.
It's not. So I can
So where's
clarify
the
that.
EDKB fit into this? Because that's
So-
what we keep
One
hearing.
representative that they've nominated.
Yeah,
to
it
be
is.
involved in
So,
that
and it's about the creativity cluster and how that's helping to inform and drive, which had previously been some of the feedback we had that business and the actual creative community hadn't been involved and where we'd got to. So we're bringing them in. There is an economic development lens to it. And I just want to clarify 2 points. That's supporting strategy sits here. It will live here. It's not shifting. It stays here. Second thing I just want to clarify is with the setup of the trust and new operating model, those priorities will be proposed and agreed in terms of how we move forward. So they're not just going to happen over there and we go, oh, good luck. There's a business plan that comes here. We're going to have a conversation about it. It will be set and agreed annually so that we're online. So that's, you know how I said there's going to be some stuff we discuss here that doesn't need to go to council? That's what I mean, is there's some bits that are going to come here. We'll be talking about it. And as we come back and talk about economic development and the plan for the way forward this year, I think I might just clarify that for you all, because I know that it is actually quite big and there's a lot of bits to it. So we'll just make sure we have an overarching sort of parts of the puzzle piece thing, so we know when and where it's going to happen.
Great. All right, last question, Deputy Mayor Kirby.
It's not really a question, just an observation, and it's probably pedantic. I think there's some of the things that are listed here in our planned work program. You've got approval of like private plan change. That assumes a decision being made that is in positive of those private plan changes. So maybe the wording needs to say decision on private plan changes.
Yep, that's
Yeah, good
great.
point.
That's really good, because obviously
otherwise
we're looking at it,
signal predetermination.
that's a
potentially.
really good point.
Yeah.
That wasn't intended. I think it was more the papers, the approval. So
Yeah,
that's
I
at
get
our
it.
end,
Title of the
but
I get it. Just
very
the
good
wording
point.
might
Yeah.
clarify that for people. Otherwise,
Perfect.
I don't really want the emails that I'll probably get. Anyway, thank you.
No, great clarification. We can definitely update that.
Okay, cool. Not seeing any other lights on. So although this is an update, we do have 2 recommendations, A and B. So I'm happy to move those. It's just that we discuss the priorities. No, yeah, cool. I don't need to do a rite of introduction really, other than to say thank you for all the work that's gone into displaying this information, I think in a way that did allow us to quite nicely kind of go through along a timeline and see what the rest of the year is going to entail. So just thanks for pulling this together quite quickly, because otherwise this meeting would potentially have been cancelled. So it was great to have something to really discuss, and even though we got it last night, we still were able to have a really, I think, useful conversation today. So thanks for the work that went into preparing the slides and the update. Any contributions to debate? Councillor Halliday?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Look, just agreeing and endorsing your comments, Madam Chair, around all this. It's just great seeing how things are starting to lock together, but also seeing how our committees sort of fit into that, what's coming to them as such as well. So I guess from my perspective, my personal perspective, as Chair of the Social Sustainability Committee, I can be starting to front foot some things that I would like to see some reporting on that's perhaps specific to us, that doesn't need to go any further and can be a very simple update just to keep in tabs of things. But it's nice to be sort of in that position as such. I just want to congratulate and thank staff of the process and the clarity around what we do. And I guess the thing is, and it was very interesting, the CEO's comments around what we're getting achieved, because the flows are there and the relationships are there. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's been a big achievement this triennium with regards to ensuring that we are working in a cohesive manner. That doesn't mean that we can't be poking sticks and that sort of stuff. We know that does happen, but we want to see outcomes for our community. So clearing those pipes, shall we say, so that those outcomes are happening and chunking into those is great. But it's also good that this is easily, when I say easily understandable, we understand it because we do this day to day. Hopefully the community gets an understanding that a lot is being done, a lot is being achieved, and we are heading in the right directions. I just get a little bit concerned. We get sometimes derailed by little incidents that happen that also become big items in a negative way, especially coming into electioneering, where that can be used against council. And it really hides a lot of the great work that's being done here as such. So, just onwards and upwards. This is great, and great sort of recalibration, should we say, from the beginning of the year. Get our heads back into it as we move forward, so just appreciated it coming to the table.
Great, thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, just very quickly, I was just going to say similar thing in terms of the cohesiveness of this council, I think, obviously my priority is around arts and creativity, but notwithstanding, there's been an enormous amount of progress made, and people who have been around councils for a while will know how it's like wading through treacle sometimes. And so this is a really, really good system, good way of doing it.
Cool. All those in favour? Aye. Against? It's carried. Great, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
So now we move to item 10, confirmation of minutes, confirming the minutes of the 14th of November and 5th of December. Yeah, great. Round of applause. No, genuinely, like, thank you. Thank you, yeah. So would you like to move those, Councillor Wilson? Great, I'll second. All those in favour? Aye, against, carried. Now we have to move into public excluded. Yeah, I'll move, and seconded by Councillor Warwick. All those in favour? Aye, against, that's carried. Community board members.